Nyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Cartels? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Can we see the prayers to the 6 Goswamis, please? Thank you. What's that? Thank you. Thank you. Krishnat Kirtana Gana Nartanat Paro Shad Goswami Ashtakam by Srinivasa Acharya. Srinivasa Acharya, there it is. Srinivasa Acharya was one of the contemporaries of Narottam Das. And so they were in the generation after Lokanath Goswami and after Jiva Goswami. After Krishnadas Kaviraj. And he was a great book distributor. He took many books that the 6 Goswamis had written and they made copies of it and put it on a cart and they brought it from Vrindavan to enlighten the devotees of Bengal. And they had many disciples, Narottam, Srinivas, and also Shyamananda Pandit. And many of Narottam Das's disciples went into Assam, Manipura, and up in the very eastern side. And Shyamananda Pandit had many disciples in Jagannath Puri. And Srinivasa Acharya was like the main acharya of his time at that contemporary time. He wrote this wonderful song. Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Parao Premamritam Bho Nidhi. Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Parao Premamritam Nidhi. Dhira dhira jana priyo priyakaro nirmatsarao pujitao. Chaitanya kripa bharao bhuvi bhuvao bharavahantarakao. Tanya kripa bharao bhuvi bhuvao. Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunao Sadharma Sangstapako. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunao Sadharma Sangstapako. Lokanam hitakarino tribhuvane manyao shuranyakurao. Kanam hitakarino tribhuvane manyao shuranyakurao. Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mattalako. Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. Shri Gauranga Gunanuvarnana Vidhao Shraddha Samhridyan Vitao. Papo tapa nikrinta nautanubritam Govinda Ganamritai. Govinda Ganamritai. Anandam Buddhivardhanaika Nipunao Kaivalya Nishtaruko. Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. Tyaktva Turnamashesha Mandalapati Shrening Sada Tuchavad. Turnamasheshaman Bhutvahatina Ganesha Kau Karunaya Kaupina Kanta Shritau Gopi Bhavara Samritabdhi Lahari Kalola Magnau Muhor Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Next. Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Kujat Kokila Hangsa Sarasagana Kirne Mayura Kule Nana Ratna Nibadha Mula Vitapa Shri Yukta Vrindavane Radha Krishnam Maharnishang Prabhachato Jivartato Yo Muda Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Sankhya Purvakanama Gana Natibhi Kalavasani Kritao Sankhya Purvakanama Gana Natibhi Kalavasani Kritao Nidrahara Vihara Kadi Vichitao Chatyanta Dinao Chayao Radha Krishna Guna Smriter Madhurima Nandena Sammohito Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Radha Kunda Tate Kalinda Tanaya Tire Chavangshi Vate Premon Madhava Shada Shesha Dashaya Grasto Pramatto Sada Gayanto Chakata Harer Gunavarang Bhava Vibhuta Muda Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Hey Radhe Braja Devi Ke Chalalite Hey Nanda Suno Kutaha Shri Govardhana Kalpa Pada Patale Kalindi Vane Kutaha Koshanta Viti Sarvato Vrajapure Kedar Mahavipalo Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Yugo Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako So this is a song in glorification of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They were disciples of Lord Chaitanya, or directly late contemporaries, in the next generation from Lord Chaitanya. They were ordered by Lord Chaitanya to go to Vrindavan and to find there all the holy places that Krishna had performed his pastimes, and to sort of restore them, to build memorial places there, buildings and temples there. Bless you. And also to compose literatures explaining the details of the nectarian philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, of Krishna consciousness. It's there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but the 6 Goswamis elaborated on it and explained all the emotions of the spiritual world, and particularly of the Vrindavan pastimes. And they composed dramas, they composed scientific treatises, they composed wonderful poetry, and Jiva Goswami composed this great philosophical Sandarbhas treatise and explained the entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness in a very systematic way. And so let's read the translations, because they didn't just do this, but they also lived as sadhus in Vrindavan with just loincloths on, just a little torn cloth in the cold weather, in the hot weather, hardly eating anything, never sleeping maybe an hour or so in the night. And they were able to accomplish so much, merged in ecstasy, and they showed the example of ecstatic devotees that we must always keep on our head. And not try to imitate, but remember that this is the ultimate spiritual attainment. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are always engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and dancing. By the way, Srila Prabhupada has translated the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there's a lot of discussion in there, especially of Sri Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. And but also the other Goswamis are mentioned in the purports and then also in some of the verses. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was just a little child when Lord Chaitanya stayed in Rangakshetra with his father for the 4 months of the rainy season. They are just like the ocean of love of God, and they are popular with both the gentle and the ruffians, because they are not envious of anyone. Whatever they do, they are all pleasing to everyone, and they are fully blessed by Lord Chaitanya. Thus they are engaged in missionary activities meant to deliver all the conditioned souls in the material universe. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, who are very much enriched in understanding Lord Chaitanya, and who are thus expert in narrating his transcendental qualities. They can purify all conditioned souls from the reactions of their sinful activities by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. Govinda Ganamritai. The word is that it's like nectar that they're pouring. The Govinda song nectar. As such, they are very expert in increasing the limits of the ocean of transcendental bliss, and they are the saviors of the living entity from the devouring mouth of impersonal liberation. For devotees, the idea of becoming liberated by Hare Krishna, by merging with Krishna's impersonal effulgence is very distasteful. Vaishnavas never accept that kind of liberation, because they want to experience the greater bliss of service to personal Krishna in his form, in his aspect as Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. 4. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, who kicked off all association of aristocracy as insignificant. In order to deliver the poor conditioned souls, they accepted loincloths, treating themselves as mendicants. But they are always merged in the ecstatic ocean of the gopis' love for Krishna, and they bathe always and repeatedly in the waves of that ocean. So the 6 Goswamis were very rich and aristocratic. They came from high-born families or wealthy families or big position, powerful positions in government. And they gave that all up and just became sadhus in Vrindavan, but they weren't miserable renunciates, just feeling like, oh, you know, what have I lost? But they were feeling always in ecstasy, experiencing the mood of the gopis, who Lord Chaitanya told us, these cowherd village girls who loved Krishna were the greatest devotees of all. So they accepted that, that mood of devotional service. 5. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, who are always engaged in intensely worshipping Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in the transcendental land of Vrindavana, which is filled with peacocks and flocks of cooing swans, cuckoos and cranes. In Vrindavan there are also beautiful trees full of fruits and flowers, and having roots inlaid with all valuable jewels. With great delight, the Goswamis bestow upon the living entities the boon of the goal of life. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, who are engaged in chanting the holy names of the Lord and bowing down in a scheduled measurement. In this way, they utilized their valuable lives, and in executing these devotional activities, they conquered over eating and sleeping, and were always meek and humble, enchanted by remembering the transcendental qualities of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis who were sometimes on the bank of the Radha Kund lake, sometimes on the shores of the Jamuna, and sometimes at Vanshivata. At these places they appeared just like madmen in the full ecstasy of love for Krishna, exhibiting different transcendental symptoms in their bodies, and they were merged in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis who were chanting very loudly everywhere in Vrindavan, shouting, Queen of Vrindavana, Radharani, O Lalita, O son of Nanda Maharaj, where are you all now? Are you just on the hill of Govardhan? Or are you under the trees on the bank of the Jamuna? Where are you? These were their moods in executing Krishna consciousness. 6 Goswamis ki jai. So, I'd like to, just before we move on, I'd like to open the floor for any discussions, questions, comments about the 6 Goswamis. How many of you are familiar with the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and some of their works? Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. That Srila Prabhupada translated many books by them, including Nectar of Instruction. Have you seen this book? Upadeshamrita by Rupa Goswami, and also he gave a summary study of a treatise on Bhakti Yoga by Rupa Goswami. The book is called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Srila Prabhupada's summary study is called The Nectar of Devotion. And Hare Krishna. Any discussion, any thoughts or questions? Yes. Braja? No. Brinda. Brinda Sevaki Dasi. Okay, I got to remember. Hare Krishna. Is it on?
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Yes, in these books, in Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, it's interesting that it's a science. So everything is so described in details. So you can follow. It's not something like whimsical or something. So it's so good and it's easy.
It's a science.
It's like science to.
It's a science, and yet it's a poetic science. It's not one of these dry, technical, get out your computer, your slide rule, and crunch a bunch of numbers. But the book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's divided. Sometimes an author will divide books into books and then chapters and so forth. But this is divided into waves because it's describing an ocean of ecstasy, of love of Krishna, and then it's divided into different waves, and the waves are divided. Yes, go ahead.
I heard that they used to eat every other day, just a little bit of something.
Little bit of buttermilk or something like that.
Every other day?
Yeah. Yes. At least, I think all of them were mainly eating like that. And sometimes they were shaking like that. People thought, oh, it's because you're very old and you never sleep and you never eat, and they were so skinny. But it was really because they were in ecstasy, and that's what ecstatic symptoms, one of the ecstatic symptoms people have is sometimes they faint or they cry, tears shoot out of their eyes, and sometimes they get stunned and the body changes colors. They're effulgent anyway, but sometimes their effulgence turns from gold to pink or to dark or whatever. Lord Chaitanya was like that. People would watch him and his hairs would stand on end on his body so much that his pores would start to bleed a little bit and turn red. And so it's a little frightening. The gopis displayed these symptoms as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya and other great devotees displayed these symptoms within our recorded history, time, and memory, just 500 and so years ago. Even less. And of course it's like, since Prabhupada came to America and started this movement, that was 50 years already have gone past. But still, so it's in recent history that Lord Chaitanya was here, and these great personalities were here, and they wrote these amazing books. another one of the books by Sanatana Goswami. It's in the back bookshelf there. The BBT published it about, I'd say 10 or 15 years ago. It's called Brihat Bhagavatamrita. And Sanatana Goswami. Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it's really 2 books, 2 parts. The first part, but it's explaining some of the similar ideas. The first part is, by the way, Sanatana Goswami explains that this book was what Parikshit Maharaj told. After he heard the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, there was still a little time before the snake bird came and killed him. And his mother, who was Abhimanyu's wife, right, Uttara, and she came because when he was listening to the narration, there were all these sannyasis sitting around up front, and she couldn't get a good audience to hear everything that Shukadeva Goswami was saying. So she asked, what, they were staying there for 7 days and 7 nights without eating or sleeping, in rapt attention, listening to this narration. So then his mother came and said, what did he say? And he said, well, I'll tell you the essence. And he told these 2 books. The first book tells about Narada Muni, and how Narada Muni sees a Brahmana in Mathura performing beautiful worship of Krishna, and he's overwhelmed with ecstasy, and he tells this Brahmin, you are the greatest devotee of Krishna, you're the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. I see how you're doing everything with so much bhakti. And this devotee then says, oh, no, these are the faults in my devotional service, and explains different things about why his devotional service is inferior to someone else's. And then he says, there's a king in South India, and you should see how he worships Krishna and how much love he has. So then Narada Muni gets excited about hearing about this other devotee, and he goes and sees the king. And in this way, one by one, the king tells him, oh, but you should go see King Indra. And King Indra tells him, you should go see Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma says, you should see Shiva. And Shiva says, you should see Hanuman. And Hanuman says, you should see, Arjuna. And in this way, he's going from devotee to find out, and the Pandavas say, you should see the Yadavas. And, in this way, he's going and finding also how these devotees, of course, their devotional service is spotless, but they're describing what they can perceive as, even when pure devotional service is perfect and it's on the liberated platform and it's untouched by the modes of nature, still connoisseurs of rasa can detect, this thing could be seen as inferior to that thing. So he's explaining this. There's these Rasika Shastras where he's explaining this details of devotional service. And finally, Narada Muni ends up with the Yadus, with Krishna in Dwarka, and Yadus are all crying there because Krishna won't get out of bed, because he's hankering for Radharani and the residents of Vrindavan, and he's thinking, oh, how have I left them? I can't live without them. I only live for them. And he's in this way, Krishna is in pain, moaning and groaning about so they have to think of some way to satisfy Krishna, and they make an imitation Vrindavan called New Vrindavan in Dwarka. And they make it next to the ocean so that, because Dwarka is an island, so that Krishna thinks it's the Jamuna River. And he's able to go there among these. Vishwakarma made these beautiful figures that were indistinguishable from real people. Of course, they didn't move, but Krishna could think that, well, sometimes devotees get like that when they're stunned. They can't move in Vrindavan. So he went there and he could feel like he was back at home in Vrindavan. So that's the first book. And then the second book is that there's a devotee a devotee named Gopakumar, a little cowherd boy in the Braj area. and his guru comes by and teaches him to chant the Gopal mantra. But then his guru goes into ecstasy and stops speaking. So he's just left with his mantra but not much instruction. But anyway, he goes on chanting this mantra, and he keeps going to all these different realms. He keeps coming back to Jagannath Puri before he goes to other higher and higher realms. But he goes up through all the heavenly planets, and each place he becomes the king for a while. He goes to, Indra Loka, and Indra is away, and Indra asks him, please sit on my throne and you govern all the demigods while I'm gone. And in the same way with Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma. And then he goes, this little cowherd boy just keeps chanting his Gopal mantra, and he doesn't become distracted by the power he gets or anything like that. And he goes up to the Vaikuntha Lokas, and he goes to Dwarka, he goes to Ayodhya, he goes to all these different places. But he's still, in each place, he experiences the kind of devotional service that's going on there, and there's descriptions of that. But he still feels somehow incomplete. And then he finally gets to Krishna in Vrindavan, in Goloka Vrindavan, and Krishna embraces him and welcomes him home, and then he realizes that his guru was Krishna all along, and that Krishna reminded him, oh, your real identity is, you're this cowherd boy here, and so forth. So this is yes, please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Actually, coming back to the Six Goswami prayer, I have just one question concerning some balance here, because it said that you shouldn't, in the Bhagavad Gita says in chapter 6, says there is no possibility of one becoming a yogi or Arjuna if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. So how do we reconcile the people that strive to make a higher standard of not sleeping but performing devotional service with what Krishna himself is saying, that you shouldn't have a middle way balancing of not doing extremes?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's we shouldn't try to imitate this extreme austerity of the six Goswamis. We're not capable of it, and it wouldn't be healthy for us, and it wouldn't be good for us. Krishna, in the 3rd chapter, Krishna says that someone can restrain their senses and become like a pretend meditator, but inside they're thinking about sense gratification, and there's no use to that. There's no use for that. So Krishna says instead, people should follow. And then he goes on in the 3rd chapter to say, even the liberated people, they have to set a good example for the general people. And he tells Arjuna that even if you have no duty, you have to perform. Krishna says, even I don't have to perform any duty, and yet I'm getting married and doing my, going to the assembly and doing politics with the Kurukshetra war and different things like that. Jarasandha liberating the. Did you have another comment? But I'll finish your question. Was it related to this? Or? Sure.
Quickly, I just wanted to ask, what was the title of the book right after Brihad Bhagavatamrita that Sanatan wrote about the Gopal mantra? What was the title of the book?
It's the same. It's the same book, but it's divided into 2 parts. So we should be regulated. We shouldn't. Krishna also describes in Bhagavad Gita that some people practice severe austerities that torture the supersoul inside themselves. And that, of course, is not useful for devotional service. These yogis, they practice sense control, and all the sitting postures and things, breathing exercises, they help control the senses, and they also help with longevity and the ability to sit for long periods of time, to meditate, the goal of which is to become a lover of Krishna. I noticed that. I went recently with my family to see this Chinese dance performance called Shen Yun, and they're Falun Gong. They practice a kind of like Tai Chi, yoga mixed with Taoism and some Buddhist concepts and things like that. But this kind of discipline and even physical control can help, subdue the way the mind tries to go after objects and things like that. And so, Krishna is explaining that to be a yogi, one should be regulated and not try to torture oneself. One has to have enough sleep to be able to meditate, but not too much sleep, which will not, destroy your meditation. So one can be moderate. One doesn't have to, but at the same time, one has to know the goal is to serve Krishna. So many great devotees are married. They have families. They're kind fathers and mothers, and they take care of their children and raise them nicely, and they perform these duties. And at the same time, they're completely aware that they're a spirit soul, and that everyone is a spirit soul, and that we're all servants of Krishna, and they see themselves only as an insignificant servant, and they don't think that my own family is the most important or anything like that. But they can go on living their lives in a regulated way. And but Lord Chaitanya wanted to, the six Goswamis, to set an example of the highest reaches of spiritual perfection. And so they showed how that material enjoyment became completely insignificant to them, and that they were so absorbed in devotion to Krishna that they didn't feel the need to waste time eating and sleeping, and their bodies were like blocks of wood. They had complete control over it, but they were in ecstasy all the time. They weren't morose, thinking, oh, I don't get enough to eat, or I don't get enough sleep, and the temple president is mean, and and the weather is too hot or cold or anything. But they were examples of, what very, very elevated Paramahamsas are like. But at the same time, we shouldn't try to imitate that example without having those qualities. Therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta, he started this, within our sampradaya, traditionally until 20th century, the sadhus became Babajis, like the six Goswamis. They wore torn cloth and I think no Brahmin threads, and they didn't carry staffs and wear saffron like that. They wore white clothes and were very, very, lived outdoors, very skinny and whatever, but not. But the Bhaktisiddhanta saw a need for a reform, that many people were living like that externally, but actually cheating. And they were smoking, they were taking ganja, they were having girlfriends, and then they would pose themselves as Babajis, sadhus that live out, just to meditate on Krishna, but they're actually more like our hippies were, just not having responsibility, but still enjoying sense enjoyment. So Bhaktisiddhanta wanted to establish that Lord Chaitanya's movement is not a movement really of hippies, even though it might look like that. It's not a movement of irresponsible people or immoral people. A lot of times people misinterpret, because Lord Chaitanya emphasized the conjugal mood of the gopis, how they loved Krishna as their boyfriend. But this is important to understand, that this is a very high spiritual concept. It's not to be imitated by, like, for instance, I don't usually watch a lot of Bollywood movies, but when I do, I often see there's a song about Krishna and Radha, and almost always the hero of the movie compares himself to Krishna, and the heroine is compared to Radha, and their love is compared to the love of Krishna and Radha. And this means that people are completely not understanding and completely spoiling the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Bhaktisiddhanta wanted to rectify that. So he wanted to establish that the principles of Varnashram Dharma are meant, they may not be able to be very easily established in this age, that kind of culture, those kind of customs and internalized feelings, but he wanted to establish that the sadhus should be morally correct, rectified people. And see, Lord Chaitanya, in his time, he had taken sannyas because he was trying to preach Krishna consciousness, but because of his ecstasy, people were making fun of him. And his students thought he was crazy. He was a teacher, he was a great Sanskrit teacher, Brahmin school that he ran in Navadvip, which was a great center of learning. He was a great intellectual, he was famous as Nimai Pandit, a great debater. But his students thought he had gone mad because he was chanting not only the names of Krishna, but gopis and names of gopis. And he was, because devotees, in their ecstasy, they appear a little mad sometimes, like the gopis appeared mad when they were thinking about Krishna. And so he decided that if he took sannyas, then people would bow down to him and listen to him and then get the mercy of understanding what he was doing. So he took sannyas, but in that time, the order of Shankaracharya was very, very prominent, at least in the northern part of India. All over it was very prominent. Although it started in the south, but it was prominent all over. I mean, there were still the Sri Vaishnavas and the Tattvavadis in southern India, but so the Shankaracharya's order, they carried a single stick, ekadanda. And it's actually said in the Puranas that in the age of Kali, nobody should take sannyas. And but then Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and he accepted initiation from Keshava Bharati Goswami, who was a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, but he was a sannyasi in the order of the Shankaracharya mats. There are 4 mats, north, south, east, and west, and they have many, many monks who are very, very strict in their vows in Benares and I forget the other places. But when Lord Chaitanya was traveling to Jagannath Puri, he fell unconscious at one point in ecstasy, and then in this place, the Dandabanga place, where there was a river there, on the way into the just in the outskirts of the Purushottama Kshetra Dham, you know, the whole very holy area. Lord Nityananda broke his danda into 3 parts and threw them into the river. And then Lord Chaitanya woke up. He had asked Nityananda to hold his danda for him. And then he was very, very angry. And then he decided that he wouldn't go with the rest of the devotees into Jagannath Puri. He would either go behind them or in front of them, but he wouldn't go together with them because Lord Nityananda had broken his danda. And so they said, then you should go on ahead. So he went on ahead and fainted when he saw Lord Jagannath. So Srila Prabhupada said that Bhaktisiddhanta later understood and explained this pastime, that sannyasis, Vaishnava sannyasis, can, for the sake of preaching, they can accept the Tridandi order of sannyas, which recognizes that they are servants of Krishna. And that the danda that Tridandis carry, like the Ramanujacharya sannyasis carry with a little flag on it, it's got a center stick and then 3 sticks around it, and those sticks are like body, mind, and words, should be dedicated to serving the Supreme Lord. So, Anyway, the point is that we should not try to imitate the sixth Goswami. Srila Prabhupada didn't encourage anyone to become a Babaji, and there was one devotee who thought he was going to die very soon, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, please could he be given initiation to just go sit at Radhakund and just chant Hare Krishna many, many rounds a day, all day long. And Srila Prabhupada relented and said, okay, since you only have a few weeks to live. But the devotee didn't only have a few weeks to live, and he didn't remain doing that. In fact, he kind of left the Krishna consciousness movement and went and did other things. So that wasn't, for us, his disciples, though he tried to get some disciples to become sannyasis, we were mostly young people, and many of the sannyasis that he had initiated and fell down later, and he was very upset with that. And sometimes he said, I don't want to make any more young sannyasis, because he could see, but he needed some, especially to get the movement started, he needed some examples that people would listen to of very stern, dedicated, completely dedicated people. So he was encouraging his young men to not think of getting married, but to actually think of becoming sadhus. But in the sannyas order, a very strict order, and he impressed upon us the 4 regulative principles, are essential to practicing spiritual life. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating. But other than that, we could be grihastas, we could have jobs, we could have, he wanted us to dedicate our earnings, or a large part of our earnings, to helping spread the Sankirtan movement. But he didn't make all of his disciples become sannyasis, even though he was a sannyasi. He recognized, in fact, he mentions that as a sannyasi, it was not his duty to get his disciples married. And some godbrothers could criticize him that technically he was, he should be going out and convincing people to become sannyasis. But he had disciples, and this is what they needed, was to be, at least to be married instead of just having boyfriends and girlfriends the way hippies did. So he said, that even though it's not strictly, proper according to rules and regulations, he had to do what was proper for his disciples, and he encouraged them, in many cases, to get married. And so I don't know if I answered your question, but basically what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, we should take that we should be regulated. We shouldn't try to be overly renounced. And even if we could be overly renounced, Srila Prabhupada actually wanted us to spend our time distributing books and opening temples and going out on Sankirtan parties, chanting to the people and telling the people about Krishna consciousness, getting them to read the books and getting them to come to the temples, and following the morning program of worshipping the deities every day, and hearing at least an hour of Srimad Bhagavatam discussion every morning, and at least an hour of Bhagavad Gita discussion in the evening, and reading all of Srila Prabhupada's books. That was his desire more than to create renounced devotees who chanted. For example, Bhakti Siddhanta, before he started his movement, he chanted 3 times 64. What is that? 192 rounds a day. 192 rounds a day. So Srila Prabhupada asked us to chant minimum 16 rounds. The Bhaktisiddhanta's sannyasi disciples, they were expected to chant 64 rounds every day, unless they had some active service that was important. So Bhaktisiddhanta chanted 192 rounds a day, which is what Haridas Thakur did. He did that for 10 years while his father had asked him to take care of a temple. I think it was the Yogapith temple where Lord Chaitanya was born. That he was there in that temple, and he would chant every day for 20-something hours a day or something like that. So that's pretty amazing. He did that for 10 years. He wanted to chant 1 billion names. And then he decided that what the world really needed was for someone to broadcast this message outside of India, outside of just the sort of Bengali Vaishnava region community. And so he started Gaudiya Math in the early 1920s, I believe. There's a very nice biography of Bhaktisiddhanta by Bhakti Vikas Swami. And it's in 3 volumes, and it has a chronological description and then topical descriptions, and then it has an appendix with articles he wrote and other important information about him. And it's a very good book. So I wanted to, what time is the arti? 5 o'clock. So we have an hour now, which is typical for even one lecture. We have a very long lecture time here. So I wanted to read a story from Krishna book. And since we were talking about gopis, I think I'll read about Lord Balaram returning to Vrindavan. That would be, let me see. Lord Balaram visits Vrindavan is chapter 65. How many of you have this book at home? Nice, very nice. It's important to read Srimad Bhagavatam every day. By that constant hearing, the bhakti lata, the creeper of devotion in our hearts gets nourished like watering a plant. And so we have to have some of that hearing every day, and that will actually, by the mercy of Krishna, if we continue that hearing, that will actually bring us back to Godhead. So, page 498 in this book. And you could just read along with it. So this book is very wonderful to read. You can even, most of it you can read to children. You know, there are some battles where there's descriptions of limbs being severed and rivers of blood and things like that. But it's Krishna. So Krishna came to earth, you know, partially to decrease the population of demons that was torturing Mother Bhumi. She requested to be relieved of that. So there was a lot of killing going on. And after all, he's God, so everyone dies, and that's part of his, as the universal form, he's eating them all up. Even the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, everyone gets swallowed by the great universal form. But the Krishna book is very enjoyable, and it's Srila Prabhupada's summary study of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. And while he tells the stories, he also explains enough to let us really understand the stories and what they're about. Chapter 65, Lord Balaram visits Vrindavan. Lord Balaram became very anxious to see his father and mother in Vrindavan. Therefore, with great enthusiasm, he started on a chariot for Vrindavana. The inhabitants of Vrindavana had been anxious to see Krishna and Balaram for a very long time. When Lord Balaram returned to Vrindavan, all the cowherd boys and the gopis had grown up. But still, on his arrival, they all embraced him, and Balaram embraced them in reciprocation. After this, he came before Maharaj Nanda and Yashoda and offered his respectful obeisances. In response, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj offered their blessings unto him. They addressed him as Jagadishwara, or the Lord of the universe who maintains everyone. The reason for this was that Krishna and Balaram maintain all living entities. And yet Nanda and Yashoda were put into such difficulties on account of their absence. Feeling like this, they embraced Balaram, and seating him on their laps, began their perpetual crying, wetting Balaram with their tears. These were tears of joy upon the return of their son after a long absence. Lord Balaram then offered his respectful obeisances to the elderly cowherd men and accepted the obeisances of the younger cowherd men. Thus, according to their different ages and relationships, Lord Balaram exchanged feelings of friendship with them. Remember, these are the experiences of interactions between devotees and the personality of Godhead. He shook hands with those who were his equals in age and friendship, and with loud laughing embraced each one of them. After being received by the cowherd men and boys, the gopis and King Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Balaram sat down, feeling satisfied, and they all surrounded him. First, Lord Balaram inquired from them about their welfare, and then, since they had not seen him for such a long time, they began to ask him different questions. The inhabitants of Vrindavan had sacrificed everything for Lord Krishna, simply being captivated by the lotus eyes of the Lord. Because of their great desire to love Krishna, they never desired anything like elevation to the heavenly planets or merging into the effulgence of Brahman to become one with the absolute truth. They were not even interested in enjoying a life of opulence, but were satisfied in living a simple life in the village as cowherds. They were always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and did not desire any personal benefits, and they were all so much in love with him that in his absence their voices faltered when they began to inquire from Balaramaji. First Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai inquired, "My dear Balaram, are our friends like Vasudeva and others in the family doing well? Now you and Krishna are grown-up married men with children. In the happiness of family life, do you sometimes remember your poor father and mother, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi? It is very good news that the most sinful King Kamsa has been killed by you, and that our friends like Vasudeva and the others who had been harassed have now been relieved. It is also very good news that you and Krishna defeated Jarasandha and Kalayavana, who is now dead, and you are now living in a fortified residence in Dwarka." When the gopis arrived, Lord Balaram glanced over them with loving eyes. Being overjoyed, the gopis, who had so long been mortified on account of Krishna and Balaram's absence, began to ask about the welfare of the two brothers. They specifically asked Balaram whether Krishna was enjoying his life, surrounded by the enlightened women of Dwarka, Puri. Does he sometimes remember his father Nanda and his mother Yashoda and the other friends with whom he so intimately behaved while in Vrindavan? Does Krishna have any plans to come here to see his mother Yashoda? And does he remember us gopis who are now pitiably bereft of his company? Krishna may have forgotten us in the midst of the cultured women of Dwarka. But as far as we are concerned, we still remember him by collecting flowers and sewing them into garlands. When he does not come, however, we simply pass our time crying. If only he would come here and accept these garlands we have made. Dear Lord Balaram, descendant of Dasharha, you know that we would give up everything for Krishna's friendship, even in great distress. One cannot give up the connection of family members, but although it might be impossible for others, we gave up our fathers, mothers, sisters, and relatives. But then Krishna, without caring a pinch for our renunciation, all of a sudden renounced us and went away. He broke off our intimate relationship without serious consideration and left for a foreign country. But he was so clever and cunning that he manufactured very nice words. He said, "My dear gopis, please do not worry. The service that you have rendered me is impossible for me to repay. After all, we are women, so how could we disbelieve him? Now we can understand that his sweet words were simply for cheating us." This is all actually very deep. Krishna's not really cheating, but they're feeling his separation, which is actually a higher, more full experience of love. It's part of the way the loving feelings expand through separation and meeting. So, protesting Krishna's absence from Vrindavan, another gopi said, "My dear Balaramaji, we are of course village girls, so Krishna could cheat us in that way, but what about the women of Dwarka? Don't think that they are as foolish as we are. We village women might be misled by Krishna, but the women in the city of Dwarka are very clever and intelligent. Therefore I would be surprised if such city women could be misled by Krishna and could believe his words." Actually, the gopis, Lord Chaitanya teaches us, are superior to the wives in Dwarka, because of their more intense feelings of separation and more intense mood of completely abject devotion to him, even ignoring rules of ordinary propriety. Then another gopi began to speak. "My dear friend," she said, "Krishna is very clever in using words. No one can compete with him in that art. He can manufacture such colorful words and talk so sweetly that the heart of any woman would be misled. Besides that, he has perfected the art of smiling very attractively, and by seeing his smile, women become mad after him and give themselves to him without hesitation." So in different religious traditions of the world, people think about God as being the most powerful, the creator, the greatest, and so forth. But in this particular tradition, and in his avatar as Krishna, in his most intimate and original form as Krishna, he's the most attractive person of all, the most beautiful and the most clever and witty and capable of attracting the love of his devotees. Another gopi, after hearing this, said, "My dear friends, what is the use of talking about Krishna? If you are at all interested in passing time by talking, let us talk on some subject other than him. If cruel Krishna can pass his time without us, why can't we pass our time without Krishna? Of course, Krishna is passing his days without us very happily, but we cannot pass our days happily without him." There's a place in, I believe it's in the story of Krishna visiting Kurukshetra at the time of the solar eclipse, and the inhabitants of Vrindavan went to meet with him there. And Radharani is kind of rebuking him, telling him, "How could you leave all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, your mother and father, Yashoda, Nanda, and all the elderly gopis and gopas and the cowherd boys? How could you leave us all?" And Krishna says, "I have to protect you from demons that are still around. And I've been one by one killing them, because when I was in Vrindavan they were coming every day and threatening all of you, and I only care for you the most. In fact, of all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, I only care for the gopis the most, and of all the gopis I only care for you, Radharani." This is Lord Chaitanya was, this is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the pastimes of his Rath Yatra performances. But he says, "But you should realize that I'm present everywhere. Everything is my energies, and I'm present, and whenever my name is chanted, or just by remembering me, you're in my association, so don't feel you're separate from me." You know, and he's instructing them like this about meditating, like in the Bhagavad Gita. And she then chastises him again, and she says, "What are you talking about? I'm trying to not think of you. It's thinking of you that's causing me so much pain. This pain is actually ecstasy," but she's saying like this. "It's thinking of you that's causing me so much pain. So I try to think of anything else, but I can't. So, you know, why do you need to instruct me that I should be practicing seeing how you're located everywhere by the expansion of your energies, and how you're in every atom and in the hearts of all living beings? This is not an appropriate instruction for me." Which is true. So the gopis talk like this. And when Krishna sent Uddhava with a message to the gopis, and he wanted to show Uddhava also the depth of their love for him. And Uddhava was astonished. But one of the gopis, Srimati Radharani, started speaking to a bee, to a bumblebee, and comparing him to being a messenger of Krishna, and saying, "You're an unreliable servant of an unreliable master." And she first told the bee to go back to Krishna and tell her, "We're not interested," you know, tell him that, you know, he's been mistreating us, and that, you know, he can't, we're not going to be interested in that. And then she's afraid the bee will say that, and then she wants to call him back and say, "No, no, no." So in this way, devotees in their ecstasy can appear outwardly to be like mad people, talking to themselves and speaking very quickly, or sometimes just becoming stunned and, so forth. So when the gopis were talking in this way, their feelings for Krishna became more and more intense, and they were experiencing Krishna's smiling, Krishna's words of love, Krishna's attractive features, Krishna's characteristics, and Krishna's embraces. By the force of their ecstatic feelings, it appeared to them that Krishna was personally present and dancing before them. Because of their sweet remembrance of Krishna, they could not check their tears, and they cried without consideration. Actually, Krishna did return to Vrindavan, and when the devotees were feeling his separation great intensely, they would see him there. But then they would think that they were just, hallucinating because of their intense emotions. But Krishna was coming and going to meet with them in Vrindavan. But this is the life of that most intimate part of the spiritual world that's was displayed on earth when Krishna appeared, and that's being described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Balaram, of course, could understand the ecstatic feelings of the gopis, and therefore he wanted to pacify them. He was expert in presenting an appeal, and thus, treating the gopis very respectfully, he began to narrate the stories of Krishna so tactfully that the gopis became satisfied. To keep the gopis in Vrindavan satisfied, Lord Balaram stayed there continuously for 2 months, namely the months of Chaitra, March, April, and Vaishakha, April, May. For those 2 months, he kept himself among the gopis, and he passed every night with them in the forest of Vrindavan to satisfy their desire for conjugal love. Thus Balaram also enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis during those 2 months. Balaram has different gopis than Krishna does, so they also display rasa dance pastimes, which Krishna does with certain gopis and Balaram does with other gopis. Since the season was springtime, the breeze on the bank of the Jamuna was blowing very mildly, carrying the aroma of different flowers, especially the flower known as komudi. Moonlight filled the sky and spread everywhere, and thus the banks of the Jamuna appeared very bright and pleasing, and Lord Balaram enjoyed the company of the gopis there. The demigod known as Varuna sent his daughter Varuni in the form of liquid honey oozing from the hollows of the trees. Because of this honey, the whole forest became aromatic, and the sweet aroma of liquid honey, Varuni, captivated Balaramaji. Balaramaji and all the gopis became very much attracted by the taste of the Varuni, and all of them drank it together. While drinking this natural beverage, all the gopis chanted the glories of Lord Balaram, and Lord Balaram felt very happy, as if he had become intoxicated by drinking that Varuni beverage. His eyes rolled in a pleasing attitude. He was decorated with long garlands of forest flowers, and the whole situation appeared to be a great function of happiness because of his transcendental bliss. Lord Balaram smiled beautifully, and the drops of his perspiration decorating his face appeared like soothing morning dew. While Balaram was in that happy mood, he desired to enjoy the company of the gopis in the water of the Jamuna. He therefore called the Jamuna to come nearby, but the Jamuna neglected the order of Balaramaji, considering him intoxicated. Lord Balaram became very much displeased at the Jamuna's neglecting his order. He immediately wanted to scratch the land near the river with his plowshare. Lord Balaram has 2 weapons, a plow and a club, from which he takes service when they are required. This time he wanted to bring the Jamuna by force, and he took the help of his plow. He wanted to punish the Jamuna because she did not come in obedience to his order. He addressed the Jamuna, "You wretched river, you did not care for my order. Now I shall teach you a lesson. You did not come to me voluntarily. Now with the help of my plow I shall force you to come. I shall divide you into hundreds of scattered streams." When the Jamuna was threatened like this, she became greatly afraid of the power of Lord Balaram, and immediately came in person, falling at his lotus feet and praying thus: "My dear Balaram, you are the most powerful personality, and you are pleasing to everyone. Unfortunately, I forgot your glorious exalted position, but now I have come to my senses and I remember that you hold all the planetary systems on your head merely by your partial expansion, Shesha. You are the sustainer of the whole universe. My dear Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are full with 6 opulences. Because I forgot your omnipotence, I have mistakenly disobeyed your order, and thus I became a great offender. But my dear Lord, please know that I am a soul surrendered unto you, who are very affectionate to your devotees. Therefore, please excuse my impudence and mistakes, and by your causeless mercy, may you now release me. Upon displaying this submissive attitude, the Jamuna was forgiven, and when she came nearby, Lord Balaram enjoyed the pleasure of swimming in her waters along with the gopis, in the same way that an elephant enjoys himself along with his many she-elephants. After a long time, when Lord Balaram had enjoyed to his full satisfaction, he came out of the water, and immediately a goddess of fortune offered him a nice blue garment and a valuable necklace made of gold. After bathing in the Jamuna, Lord Balaram, dressed in blue garments and decorated with golden ornaments, looked very attractive to everyone. Lord Balaram's complexion is white, and when he was properly dressed, he looked exactly like the white elephant of King Indra in the heavenly planets. The river Yamuna still has many small branches due to being scratched by the plowshare of Lord Balaram. And all these branches of the river Jamuna still glorify the omnipotence of Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram and the gopis enjoyed transcendental pastimes together every night for 2 months, and time passed so quickly that all those nights appeared to be only one night. In the presence of Lord Balaram, all the gopis and other inhabitants of Vrindavan became as cheerful as they had been before in the presence of both brothers, Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 65th chapter of Krishna, Lord Balaram visits Vrindavan. So it's said that in Krishna consciousness, I think in the Sri Brahma Samhita it says this, that in the spiritual world, every word is a song, and every step is a dance, and it's also said that every day is like a festival. Not there in that verse, but elsewhere, that the life of the spiritual association in Krishna consciousness is like an ecstatic festival at all times. And even if there's difficulties in life, the devotees can easily overcome them because they're just merely temporary and external. And Queen Kunti prayed to Krishna that all these difficulties just made her see Krishna again and again, and by seeing Krishna, she knew that they would never any longer see birth and death. So she was wishing that, she said, we suffered from the poison cake, from the, evil assembly where Draupadi was tried to be disrobed, from the battle of Kurukshetra when all the Maharathas, from the house of Lak where they were set on fire, and from the all the attack her sons being attacked by the weapons of all the great generals of the time, the great heroes. And now, she said, just recently, Ashwatthama had thrown a Brahmastra weapon to kill the Pandavas' only remaining descendant, King Parikshit, in the womb. But Krishna came and protected them again. So she was telling Krishna that, I don't mind all these calamities. I wish they would come again and again as long as we see you. She was actually pleading with Krishna not to leave just yet. After the battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna was there, and he stayed some time with the Pandavas and helped King Yudhishthira perform some sacrifices because of his compassion for those who had died. And he also witnessed the passing of Bhishma Dev, who was waiting on the battlefield until the sun began its northern journey again. So, we'll read a verse from Bhagavad Gita, but first, let's have some discussion. Anything stand out to you about the story, or any questions or thoughts about the story we read? One of the things that's so enjoyable about the Krishna book is it's divided into these are actually the chapters that are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. But Srila Prabhupada explains them rather than have a verse and an explanation, then another verse and an explanation where Srila Prabhupada speaks of the different commentaries of all the great Vaishnavacharyas. He just puts it all in a form like a story. And these stories are very pleasant to read. And we could make a good habit of like reading one chapter every day or something like that. We have a chapter a day of Bhagavad Gita. And I know it's hard in Silicon Valley with all our jobs and families and different requirements. It's hard to make so much time. But we could have a chapter a day of Krishna book too. And learn all the Krishna book stories. And these are the pastimes of the spiritual world and of the best part of the spiritual world. At least there's pastimes of Vrindavan there as well as the Mathura and Dwarka pastimes. Yes, please. By the way, what's your name, please?
Nishkama Dasi.
Nishkami Dasi?
I just wanted to know regarding the other Goswamis, whether you have like a list of famous books that they wrote so that I know where to look.
Yeah, well, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Madhya Lila chapter 1, there's some of their books listed. There's two very famous dramas by Rupa Goswami called Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. There is, by Sanatana Goswami, there's the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was the manual. The six Goswamis understood that it would be very hard to just re-establish the whole Vedic social system and the system of performing yagyas every day. So they adopted the Pancharatrika system, which is a simplified system involving deity worship and other rituals to purify, because people need to be purified before they can actually appreciate Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, Yeshang Tvantakatang papang jananam punyakarmanam tedvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mang dridhavrataha. Before we can worship Krishna with very firm determination, we have to be free from the influences of pap. And so all of our past lives, we're all carrying around with us this huge sort of unmanifest results of karma that later will become thoughts and desires and then eventually fructify into actual feelings of pleasure and pain and so forth. That prarabdha, and will form our later bodies. But Krishna says we have to be free of that. So Hari Bhakti Vilas is the manual for practicing the sadhana bhakti in accordance with the proper Pancharantrika system. That it was said in the song that they were very expert at scrutinizingly studying all the scriptures for the purpose of presenting eternal religious principles for everyone. So they studied all the Puranas and all the Vedic literatures, which are very vast and deal with many different subjects. And the six Goswamis condensed it into a religion of Lord Chaitanya that we can follow in this modern era. And so the Hari Bhakti Vilas was the famous book by Sanatana Goswami, the Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita also. The Jiva Goswami wrote a great treatise on the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness called the Sandarbha, the Sat Sandarbhas. He also has another Sandarbha, which is, these are like strings of garlands of summaries of things from the different scriptures. And then there's one, I think it's called the Krama Sandarbha, I forget, which is a different book, which is like a summary of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. That is a study of the Bhagavatam. But the six Sandarbhas are the Bhakti Sandarbha, the Jiva Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha. I'm not sure of the names actually. And there's a place in Vrindavan where there's a locker, it's like a shed made out of stone, you know, big stuff. And inside are many books written by the six Goswamis that are so esoteric that nobody could read them in Kali Yuga, so they're just kept inside and people offer puja to this place. Raghunath Das Goswami wrote, well, Rupa Goswami wrote the Hansadutta, Jiva Goswami wrote the, what's it called? Gopala Champu. I mean, they're just vast. There's many, many, many of them, and Srila Prabhupada didn't have time to translate them all. But he said in that purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the first chapter of the Madhya Lila, that he named a number of these works, and he said that, you know, any educated gentleman should be familiar with these works. But first we should become familiar with his books that he did translate and comment on: Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction. This is a book by Rupa Goswami, Upadeshamrita, and Nectar of Devotion. He also wrote Easy Journey to Other Planets and you know, other books. And the BBT has then taken collections of his lectures and edited them to make books like the Teachings of Lord Kapila or the Teachings of Queen Kunti. So I'm not encouraging you to neglect Srila Prabhupada's books to go out and read all the Goswami books, but we should know that they're there and that they're very deep, and that Srila Prabhupada did say that you know, to become a completely cooked, well turned out Paka devotee, we should be familiar with at least these main books. And I haven't even scratched the surface of what they were. Shivaram Swami, do you know who he is? He's was in England for a long time. He's Hungarian American, and he has centers in Hungary, and he writes books about these books. He takes the essence of these books and puts them in chronological order and makes them easy to understand the sense of these things that devotees should know. Sometimes devotees in the mats or sanghas of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers were surprised that we didn't know so much of these books, you know, because they're more familiar with them. So, but Srila Prabhupada didn't so much emphasize that we had to do that. He really emphasized, because even though we do have to hear every day, and hearing and chanting is essential, and chanting japa and you know, going to Mangalarti and all these things are essential for us, we also have to work. We have to serve Srila Prabhupada in Krishna consciousness. He had some work for us to do, which was really Bhakti Siddhanta's work, which was to spread this Krishna consciousness movement and make it available to people all over the world. So mostly we go out and we distribute Bhagavad Gitas and sometimes Krishna books, because we want to get the people of the world to become devotees. And Prabhupada, that was our Guru Dakshin that Prabhupada wanted from us. It's our, you know, he gave us access to this world of transcendental literature by the six Goswamis and by Krishnadas Kaviraj. He did translate the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is sometimes thought of as like the book of the seventh Goswami, that it's that important. Sometimes Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also called the seventh Goswami. He wrote a number of books, you know, just a vast number of books in the 19th century and early 20th century. But, so we should not just become, you know, like PhD students of Srila Prabhupada's books and you know, we have to practice what we read, and what Krishna is telling us is that we have to engage our senses in actual service. an actual devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us to press on this Krishna consciousness movement, this International Society for Krishna Consciousness that he entrusted. He had us, he created it, he had his disciples create these temples, and he traveled around to make sure they were doing well, and then he asked us that, don't let it fall apart after I disappear. At least maintain what I've given you, and then expand. And he gave certain orders, like to build that temple that is now being built in Mayapur, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So most of us, anyway, we're not going to, we have some wonderful PhDs of Krishna conscious literature, like Radha what's his name? Ravi Gupta, that came here and gave these classes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Radha Gopinath? Radha Raman. Is that his name? Radhika Raman. Radhika Raman Das. We have, devotees who are scholars and who also are working within the scholarly world to explain Srila Prabhupada's movement. And we need that too. We have the Bhaktivedanta Institute to explain this philosophy of Krishna consciousness is not just some religion or some faith, but it's actually a very deep, perfect philosophy that can contribute to physics and chemistry and astronomy and cosmology and all of that. It shouldn't be seen as, most people, I think, still outside of our little community, most college professors and politicians and other movers and shakers, and they think of this Hare Krishna movement as just some, religious faith. Maybe it's popular with Hindus because that's the culture they were born in. But why is it important to me? But actually, it's the entire truth about God and the soul and yoga and devotion and reincarnation and the goal of life and how to attain it, yoga and about creation and annihilation and the modes of nature and how they work and how time and space really works in different ways. It's not just the one way that people have developed, humans have developed through their ascending process of science. But there's more to know about psychology and sociology that's not yet known. The devotee should become expert in these things and should be able, not only to be able to explain them, but to practice them in a way that people will see that these are the most advanced, most knowledgeable, most perfect people, and that we can become that also. Society should move toward that. So Srila Prabhupada didn't think small at all. Even though he told us to maintain what he had already established, some 108 temples or something, he let us know, even from the time there was just a little storefront with 10 or 15 students in this Lower East Side, in this kind of poor neighborhood in Manhattan, he let us know that the goal was really to make Krishna consciousness the main culture of the world, to establish it as the main and the highest culture of the world. And I know that may sound incredible, but by reading his books we can start to see how that can be true. So maybe I went off on a tangent and I forgot exactly what, but you were asking about the 6 Goswami books. So yes, a lot of them are listed there, and Prabhupada gave us access to that whole culture whereby we could understand. For me, I haven't really learned them. I haven't really done my job very well as a disciple of Srila Prabhupada at all, but I think that by active service and by regular chanting and making sure we don't neglect all those things that Srila Prabhupada required, that will give us the ability to understand those books, but not that we need to just, like stop chanting around so we can write a write a big long paper on the Gopala Champu or the Hansadutta or one of those kind of esoteric books. They're beautiful books. And the Shivaram Swami books, Shivaram Swami explains that these books are, he said most of our books are, addressed, we want to have books to present to neophytes who can just become devotees. But he said he's writing his books for the Madhyama Adhikaris who are already kind of established in their regular sadhana and who want to understand and be able to answer all the questions that people may have philosophical doubts. Last week there was a man at the end of the class. Is he here tonight? I don't see him. But he asked a question, a very good question, which was he was concerned that all these stories, they sound like, kind of hard to believe, as if they were, made up children's stories or something like that. He didn't say children's stories, but he was saying, isn't it more important I forget exactly what he was saying, but isn't it more important he couldn't believe in the demigods. That was his thing. He couldn't believe in the descriptions of demigods, that they, Brahma rides on a swan and Kartikeya rides on a peacock and, Ganesh rides on a rat and things like that. And he was thinking, this all sounds like made up. Don't we know now that the moon is just a rock of dust and that these stories are just kind of fanciful creations? And I didn't really have time to explain to him then, but the truth is that they aren't. They're actually higher philosophy. And if we understood the higher philosophy correctly, then we would be able to actually appreciate that these are more essential stories than the stories we're being told in our science classes and on our philosophy classes and literature classes and things in college. So that's our goal, that there should be... Srila Prabhupada used to come to university campuses and he said, you have so many different departments here for different areas of study, but where's the department to study the soul? He would say that. We should know, isn't that the most important thing, to know what happens to us when we die? Why are we suffering? Why are we forced to get old? I think that in Western civilization, people had arguments about those kind of questions so much that people just, not arguments, but because those were the questions that were around which politics were organized. Also in the Muslim world, you see, different sects are fighting with one another and blowing each other's mosques up and things like that because of factions within this doctrinaire couple religions. So I think that people just decided eventually that that was too much trouble. In England, they had couple hundred years of wars between Anglicans and Catholics and Puritans, and there were different revolutions and things and people getting armies, and eventually they just decided, let's be practical, The things we need to get along is the laws against stealing and murder and those kind of things, and let people have their private faith in whatever area they have. And that the tendency is to look at religion like that it's a matter of personal choice and it's just a matter of your own belief. But Srila Prabhupada was saying, no, these are important questions. We have to be able to answer these questions. Why did I take birth here, this kind of body, instead of, like a pygmy in a savannah land or something like that? Why do we... what makes us different from animals, and how can we... what makes us different is that we ask these kind of questions, right? Animals are expert in finding food and shelter and mating and defending themselves with claws and teeth. Srila Prabhupada would say there's those things, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But the human being asks these questions. Why am I here? Why am I suffering? What is the soul? What is God? What is the absolute truth? If our greatest result of our education and our intelligentsia and our philosophy and everything is simply to try to improve our ability to eat and sleep and mate and defend, then that's not really advancement. He would say, a dog is running on 4 legs, and now you can run for 80 miles an hour on 4 wheels, but the activity is just the same. You're just running to go after some food, or something like that, or to escape from your enemy, or to defeat your enemy. You can make tanks and missiles and things, but this is not really advancement of civilization. This is just advancement of some kind of animal propensities, to be able to eat better, sleep better, make air conditioning, make yourself more comfortable. But human life should be actually spent that there is a higher science, there is a higher philosophy that's for real, and it's not just a matter of you may believe this, you may believe that, whoever your church you go to or religious sect you belong to says. And yeah, people will tend to fight between churches and sects and who's the greatest leader and whatever, and they do that. That's because it's Kali Yuga. But there really has to be this, and the knowledge that are in these books of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so forth, is really that essential knowledge that can show us the higher culture. And what is that highest culture is Krishna consciousness. Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, let me see if I can remember this verse this time, but idang hi pungsa tapasas shrutasya va svishtasya suktasya chibuddhi dattayaho avichutartang kavibhir nirupito yad uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. He's saying that the learned people, the kavis, have concluded. That would be 1.5. Oh, you found it. 22. Okay. So the learned circles of advanced, intelligent people have concluded that the ultimate goal, the invincible purpose, and the ultimate conclusion of all austerity and Vedic study and performance of sacrifice and giving charity, chanting hymns, and so forth, culminates advancement of knowledge, right? We have universities that are supposed to be for advancement of knowledge and scientific research institutes and so forth. The ultimate goal culminates in the transcendental description of Lord Krishna, who's defined in choice poetry, Uttama Shloka. So Srimad Bhagavatam is that choice poetry that was composed by Vyasadeva, having heard these instructions of his guru, Narada Muni. And if people could only come to appreciate the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of culture, the wealth of poetry, the wealth of emotion of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's multifaceted and it's all-encompassing and it's seamless. And it may appear like a religious story, but it's much, much more than that. It goes way, way, way deeper than that. And we don't like to say, because people will get defensive, but the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran and stuff, they may touch on the idea of God and devotion, but they don't really go into this kind of, they don't give this kind of full picture and this kind of detail. One time I was giving a public address and I said something about the inferior scriptures of the Christians and Muslims and Jews. And I think some people in the audience made a sour face, and because it's not good etiquette to speak like that. But this is the truth, that those religious scriptures are certainly wonderful and they certainly add something important to human society. But if they only knew Srimad Bhagavatam, they would understand their own scriptures so much better and so much more completely. And that's this Krishna consciousness movement. We want people to get a chance to understand these scriptures. So I was going to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita. I don't have much more time. Are there any more comments or discussions? Yes, Prabhu. Get please the microphone.
In the Nectar of Devotion, one of the verses says, Jana Sangasya Laulyam Cha Shadbir Bhakti Vinashyati.
That's Nectar of Instruction, yeah.
Sorry, Nectar of Instruction. So my question is, the Jana Sangasya means like associating with mundane people.
Yes.
We live in big cities,
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we come in contact with the different kinds of people.
Of course.
Mostly don't even have spiritual understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So this instruction, which Rupa Goswami is giving, at what stage should we take it and implement in our lives?
Well, two different things. One thing is you should understand what it means by Sangha, by association. I mean, there are places in Chaitanya Charitamrita and other biographical works of Lord Chaitanya where he says that just even seeing an atheist's face, you have to go take bath to become purified, But in fact, what Srila Prabhupada taught us to do with these kind of instructions was that yes, you can certainly go out to the grocery store and buy something from the cashier and talk to someone and say good morning to someone that you see while you're chanting your rounds and they're also walking for their health or something like that in the park. You don't have to be some kind of recluse, but you don't really take them into your heart as your dear friends, because then you become interested in the kind of things that they're interested in. So, for example, myself, I watch television, but that's associating with mundane things because these are dramas about mundane things, and people who are the heroes are concerned with getting wealthy or defending their country or doing some big task that's not associated with becoming pure devotees. So it's not good association to wrap our consciousness up in those kind of things. But it doesn't mean we can't, see people during the day or deal with them as we need to in the office. But it's that we don't become their intimate friends. I've told that story before from Niti Shastra, Panchatantra, about the monkey and the crocodile. And the monkey was playing up in the trees every day over the river, and the crocodile was swimming in the river, and one day the crocodile said, dear monkey, every day you're up playing in the trees, I see you happy, you see me here happily swimming in the river. Now how is it that we've never become friendly? How is it that I've never had you over to my house and I'd like to invite you over to come meet my wife and we can have you over for dinner. And he said, just jump down off the tree and I'll swim, you can swim on my back. And so the monkey said, okay, because he's a monkey. He's a clever monkey, but sometimes he does things impulsively, and he started going on the crocodile's back down the river. And then he said, but wait, it's true that I'm always up in the tree, you're always down in the river, you see me, I see you. Why is it that now you've asked me to come meet your wife and come to your house for dinner? And he said, well, now that you're here in the river with me, I suppose I can tell you that my wife wanted me to bring you home so that we can cut out your heart and eat it. And the clever, quick-thinking monkey said, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, but I left my heart up in the tree. Hold on, let me go get it. And he ran off before the crocodile thought to stop him. And then he said, I changed my mind, I'm not coming back. So the point is that we can interact with ordinary people as we have to living in the city. Of course, there are instructions in the Six Goswamis' books that one should live in a holy place like Mathura. And Srila Prabhupada instructed us that if we live in the association of devotees and we make all our social activities around Krishna consciousness and kirtans, then that's the same as living in a holy place. Prabhupada said, I'm here in America, but I'm not living like an American. I'm chanting, I'm doing everything. And my disciples also, they're not living like Americans anymore. They're eating only prasadam, they're only doing everything for Krishna. So we're living in the holy place. We're living in Vrindavan. I'm still a resident of Vrindavan, just, coming here as an ambassador. So we can associate with mundane people to the extent we need to get along with our lives in what we're doing. But we shouldn't give them our hearts like that, because they have no idea what to do with it, right? And rather, we should give them our association. We should invite them to participate in kirtan, come to the temple, try this prasadam, try reading one of these books, find a book that suits them and let them, and see if they're interested in it, and talk to them about it in a way that pulls them in to the association of devotees. Srila Prabhupada said, in that same book, Nectar of Instruction, there are 6 methods of association for devotees. Tadati, pratigrinati, guhyam akyati prichchati, bhunkte bhojayate chaiva, shadvidham priti lakshanam. And in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada said, that's why I started this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to give the people of the world the opportunity to associate with the devotees of Krishna in these ways, giving gifts, receiving gifts, discussing confidentially, asking confidentially, and hearing confidential discussion, and giving food and taking food. So we shouldn't take any food that's not offered first as prasadam, but we should give prasadam, and that people come and get a chance to experience that kind of association. They naturally feel very happy. They may not understand who Krishna is, or this philosophy, or the 6 Goswamis' descriptions of the emotions of the mood of separation in Vrindavan or anything like that. But for some reason they feel when they come here, this is a holy place and their spirit is uplifted, and the food doesn't make them feel full and sluggish, but it makes them feel like enlivened, and it just tastes great, and the people are all really nice, and so they have that positive experience. That's the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So now we'll enjoy the seeing the wonderful worship of Sri Sri Radha Madana Mohan and chanting the kirtan. Thank you very much.